Everyone, it's Marina from Jungal, and welcome to what might end up being a little bit of a mini series that we have for the Jungle community. So these little specific sound bites are going to follow the same format, and I'll explain where the inspiration came in a sec. So I'm going to share with you an incident or an event that's happened over the course of my 25-year management consulting career. And it'll be like a variety of things, like business, people, personal, all those types of things. Then I will share with you a little bit of my analysis of what went on and why it happened, and then some professional advice on what to do in terms of if this situation comes to you as well. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because I've been asked to, basically. I still am a practicing management consultant and spent, years doing this stuff, and the type of career I've been lucky enough to have, it has been around heavy weighting towards analysis and thinking stuff through. So I got a whole body of knowledge, and I have a lot of clients who sort of very politely say, hey, can you just tell us how you came to that conclusion? So I'm going to give it a go in these small little snippets. So here we go. Could be dreadful, could be fun, could be useful, might not, I don't know. Tell us in the comments. All right, so today's session, today's little reflection is from about 15 years ago. And I was running a program of work for a large bank, and this bank was trying to do something quite ambitious in terms of becoming what you call Basel accredited. And honestly, that whole program and some of the players in there would, it's going to, fill probably 20 of these little snippets. But the one I was thinking about that I might lead with is, it wasn't quite a remediation piece of work. I wasn't going in there because it was a startup. We were standing up this program of work. The knowledge of the executives, of what was involved, the implications for the bank, the resourcing requirement to be able to deliver such a large program of work, all of that stuff was just underbaked, which is not uncommon, by the way. The magnitude, they had forecast 1/10 of what was probably going to be required. But so it was a bit chaotic, and there were lots of personalities, which leads me to these kickoff meetings I ran as a part of the as a program director. And so I would have these meetings and with all the different stakeholders around, and an agenda and all of that good stuff, utter clarity around how these meetings would fit in to a bigger program of work and reduce risk and all of that stuff. I run a pretty tight ship on that front, and nothing fancy about that. It's all the stuff you learn when you're studying how to be a good practitioner. So I was running these sessions, and there was this guy who used to come in, the stakeholder, and what I'm going to say is very politically incorrect, but it has to be said. This guy, and we'll just call him Phil, right? Phil, we'll just call him Phil, right? So he was obnoxious, is probably an understatement. This guy would turn up late for meetings. He would be signalling constantly through his micro behaviours, his conduct, his lack of, teamwork, and all this type of stuff. It was just like this red hot mess of an individual. And I think maybe he'd read one too many self-help books where he was like, have some swag, and then everyone will think you're great. And the truth is, this fellow was quite average. He was very average, and he had a building reputation of being a bully. He had a lot of HR complaints against him, which me, in my privileged spot, I was aware of. But this guy was wild. How he would sit in meetings, try to derail them, huff, puff, totally deregulated. It was so bad it almost became funny. Now for me, that's what it was, and you can ask me loads of questions, but it was gross. This guy was obnoxious. He also had a real impact on everyone else around him, because he held a position of seniority, and he just did not give a flying toss around how his scornful remarks and his, eye rolling and all this type of shite impacted others. It wasn't until the heavy hand of, this is a bullying, threshold you're stepping into, that he was even remotely thinking about self-regulating. He wasn't self-regulating because he was a good person. He was regulating for fear of consequence. Like, that's shit. Like, that's really shit. Anyway, this guy continues on. He turns up to my meetings. He would storm out like a little baby, right? Wild. And I reckon probably some of you have met dudes like this as well. So anyway, this guy continues on. I then instinctively or intuitively, whatever, wisdom, I don't know, whatever word you want to call it, I decided to run some sessions, don't laugh, about manners, professional manners. Now manners, this is the reflection point, right? So manners were introduced to stop us biting each other, right? Just basic principles of how we treat each other and some guidelines of what's okay or not. Sort of like the pre-threshold before we have to bring in the heavy arm of a bullying complaint, that type of thing. So please, thank you, all the type of stuff that you teach your kids. And this guy, quite frankly, was acting like a horrible child. So I felt like it would be a good thing to do. So here's the analysis. This was the strategy against it, because this guy was ridiculous. So I brought in this idea of manners. And I weathered the criticism and the mocking and everyone carrying on like a pork chop about it. But they didn't understand the strategic value of what I was trying to do, which suited me fine. I don't care, I don't really have an ego on any of this stuff. Because the part that disturbed me more, and it continues to disturb me, is not the behaviour of that individual, it was the system that enabled him. So if there's one of these guys who acts like a ruddy-faced little brat, there would have been 10, 15, 20, 30 people who were complicit in enabling this terrible behaviour. That's the part that got me, was the enabling culture that allowed this bully to continue. That says a lot about this organisation's culture. Now this is the analysis part. So I used to drive home, or whatever, I'd go home on the bus, walk home, whatever, and I'd be thinking about the culture. Now, penny to a pound, my friends. So he didn't operate in isolation. He wasn't one person who was just being gross. There were loads of these people at varying stages of evolution, shall we say. He was probably quite an advanced, like, bully, but there were other ones. There were all these other little micro behaviours, I got sexually harassed by this guy, this complete loser of a guy. But what it was is that the culture was enabling it. It was ridiculous. So my strategy of bringing in manners was that it was something we could all relate. We all knew that manners was a standard that we all had to operate to. If there was a violation of it, there was a consequence. But what I was trying to do was strengthen up. There were about 80 people on this program. It was big. But I was trying to strengthen up the implicit shared values of the team and to create a framework of what was acceptable. So when violations happen, this guy and all his other creepy little mates, that the mass of the people could identify and deal with it. Rather than me trying to do this like whack-a-mole game, I used manners as like a Trojan horse, or I don't know, a catch-all phrase to try to stop this guy or minimise his impact and allow the other people to get on and do their jobs. And also, by the way, not get infected, because this guy loved it. And it was terrible. You can tell I'm still traumatised by it. So my street smart consultants, business people, what have you, when you get a bully in front of you, I've seen this countless times, when you get a bully, absolutely the bully needs to get dealt with. But cast your eyes up, have a look around and go, who has enabled this bully? Has it been the slack boss who just has an avoidance or is so rubbish at difficult conversations that allowed this little like weed to grow? Is there a culture across the board where execs speak poorly of each other? There's no trust, integrity. So this person has read it like a nasty child and gone, oh, I can play the game. And then you affix whatever you can to prevent the scaffolded culture that is enabling this bully. You start to pull that out. I call it, if you ever get to work with me, I call it the Jenga box strategy. Jenga, like, you know, Jenga block. Yeah, you try to find a Jenga block, and it's also referenced in Sun Tzu and all these things, where you look at the backdrop and go, right, what can we do to affect change or strengthen up the good side? There's my story for today. I'm going to try to do these. Tell me if these are useful. I don't know. It's like a diary. It's been like therapy. It's weird. But a lot of people do ask about this is stuff you don't get taught when you're doing management consultant training. And that's probably why we become such great observers, not because we're particularly special people. We've just got lucky careers to be able to, you know, it's around that. Right, on that note, I'm going to go show my best manners at my next, client meeting. Let us know if this is useful or it's a waste of time. It's okay, it's fine. See ya, bye.